Okay, let's move on and talk about Bo Nickal, because a lot of people are excited about Bo Nickal, and admittedly so am I. If you watch his performance against Donovan Beard, and I can't even remember the name of the guy he fought. I'm sorry. The guy he fought first on the Contender Series. He's blown through 2 straight opponents in a show that's pretty tough, man. Like, it is a pretty tough show. And it's a show that really promotes, like, knockouts and finishes and stuff like that. And you got to see that Bo Nickal kind of has that quality about him, right? And, like, we're immediately, especially because they're in the same weight class, right? Like, well, at least, Khamzat flirts between 170 and 185. But there are a lot of comparisons to be made here, right? Like, the limited amount of experience, right? He's only 3-0, including his Dana White Contender Series wins. Khamzat Chimaev came into the UFC, I believe, at like maybe 6-0, 7-0 perhaps, and like was blitzing through competition there and getting finishes quickly, right? And that's exactly what Bo Nickal has done when we've seen him fight so far. Now, you hear about him calling out Khamzat and all this stuff, right? And I personally think that's a little bit overblown. Think about the fact that Khamzat just fought Kevin Holland. Khamzat has fought Gilbert Burns. Khamzat has fought Gerald Meerschaert, right? Like, he went through fighting the lower end of the UFC talent pool and then worked his way up, admittedly rather quickly, got that kind of like Cody Garbrandt, Alex Pereira type trajectory, right? But it's because when you watch him just keep blitzing through people like Li Jingliang, you're like, all right, you just keep advancing him that same way. And that's what you do with Bo Nickal, in my opinion, right? Don't get me wrong. The triangle that he hit and everything, the way he threw the overhand left and was immediately scooping behind the leg to set up his takedown, the way he got to mount, his recognition and his willingness and his confidence to roll to his back to get that finish, all super impressive. But my point is just that Khamzat, at this point in his career, has seen higher level opponents and has also seen more responses, right? Like, if you look at the Kevin Holland breakdown I just did, there are a lot of moments in that fight where Khamzat Chimaev had to deal with adversity and had to deal with Kevin Holland putting up these like really nuanced defenses, right? Granted, he tried the Granby roll the same. He tried it 3 different times, right? But the point is just that like Khamzat seems to have an answer for all of these different threats or escape attempts that you might pose against him. Whereas we haven't really seen anybody put up that sort of resistance yet against Bo Nickal. So that's why Dana White's completely right. You have to put him in, and you have to make sure that you build him up correctly and that you don't just immediately throw him to top 15 talent. You put him on the Khamzat track. Put him against guys at the lower end of the talent pool. No offense to Jamie Pickett, but guys who aren't in that top 15 range. Let him fight another person after that. Start thinking about top 15, 10, 5, boom. And if he keeps accelerating through those in the way that Khamzat did, then there you go, right? He's on the right track. But like, you have to make sure you handle this correctly and don't feed him to people too early, because it's very important to gain octagon time and just to gain experience and to get into situations where you're not blitzing through your opponent like you thought you might. Like we saw Khamzat versus Gilbert Burns. And Khamzat really blew through Kevin Holland too. What he did was incredible, but like there were just moments where Holland was able to like throw up some defenses and make Khamzat work to get the takedowns a little bit more, right? So that's my only point. We got to develop this guy and see what happens. And is there potential for Khamzat and Bo Nickal to meet down the road? Absolutely, I think there is. But we got to let Bo Nickal polish up his game a little bit before we start talking about that. My personal opinion.